Hello, Comp 2. We have a lot going on right now. I'm working on grading the infographics, and hopefully you all are out there looking for a really interesting and compelling example of persuasive rhetoric to get this unit started, since it's all about persuasion. And then it culminates in the rhetorical criticism essay assignment, which I think you can see on my screen I'm sharing with you. I wanted to review this assignment sheet with you, and I've added some additional information at the end that I think you might find helpful. And this will also be posted in the announcements where you find this video. Okay, so let's get started. I'm going to hide me. Okay, so the rhetorical criticism essay is a very important assignment. It's the major writing assignment of the semester, and it's worth 20% of your overall grade in this course. The reason it is worth more is because there are more elements to it. It's a little bit more complicated, but it's also because rhetorical criticism is a very valuable and important skill. When you can understand persuasion, when you can understand rhetoric, it accomplishes a lot of things. It helps you learn how to persuade people, but it also helps you recognize when you're trying to be persuaded. And it sharpens your critical thinking skills. You need to look below the surface to think, why is the writer of the speech, the rhetor, if you will, that's the fancy word for the speaker, why did he use this? Why did he choose that? Why that phrase? Why that simile or metaphor? Why did he wear that suit? The color of his tie? The building he's standing in front of, or wherever he happens to be. And I keep saying he because they're both he's in this case, in these speeches. One of your assignments this weekend is to just watch the videos of two very powerful speeches. Not to try to analyze it at this point, but just watch for your first impressions. It will be interesting to see, after your critical analysis of the videos and the text, the script, if your opinions about your first impressions, how they change. So let's look at the assignment. I basically just reviewed the skills that it will improve. The process is to analyze the artifacts, starting out, as you see there. An artifact is, if you read that on the discussion board or in the announcement, it's anything that has been recorded that you can go back and look at and think about critically and analyze it. So each one of these speeches is an artifact. Okay, so you are going to analyze both of them, and to figure out how they used logos, pathos, ethos, rhetorical triangle, other literary devices, the choices they made to make their speech the most persuasive it could possibly be for their audience. Okay, so here is a link on the assignment sheet to the first video, which you also have in your announcements. And then I've also provided a PDF of the transcript, and they're both linked on the assignment sheet. Okay, the transcripts are very important as well as the video. It's important to observe visually, orally with your ears. What do you hear? What was going on in the background? How were the people responding? Were they paying attention? Were they not? Were people talking? Did they applaud? Were they polite? All those things come into play. And that's what makes that so interesting. But the text itself is very important also. And you'll be studying the text, reading the text of the scripts, and analyzing that too. Next week on the discussion board, you'll be answering these questions that are in this box and they'll also be on the discussion board forum. And these are worth 20 points of your grade on this essay. They're important because it gets your analysis started. And you need to stop and think about these important questions before you really start digging into the other elements that you'll be analyzing, okay? So there won't be a response on that discussion board. You'll just merely answer these questions and post it for both speeches. So I just wanted to let you know that's what this is for. But it is an important part of the assignment, okay? And it talks about, there it is, 20 points of your grade if you're following along as I'm sharing my screen. Okay, the source requirement is 3 to 4 credible sources. You do not have to find an academic journal article, but you certainly are welcome to if you would like to. And the sources, the research part of this assignment is for context. You need to research what was going on when these speeches were given. They were given very close together, so it's a pretty similar time frame that you or period in history to give you some idea that can give context to both of these speeches. So you might, research what was happening in the 60s when these speeches were given. Background information on the two rhetors, other world events, not just national events here or movements that were happening, and it's a colorful, tumultuous time in history, and you won't have any problem finding plenty of research material for your context section. The reason that's important is if a reader picks up your analysis, your critical analysis essay, and reads it, but has no idea what's going on in history, then the analysis won't mean nearly as much, won't be as meaningful, okay? And so that's why this element is very, very important, that you set the stage for your reader, okay? It's not really, it's not a report, as I say here, to give details about what's going on, because you could write a full essay just on that, but rather how the events in your research affected the rhetoric in the speech. That's what you're looking for, okay? When Martin Luther King says a phrase, what can you find out of his background or what was going on in the world, in our country, that would influence him to make him choose those words? And that's what you're looking for. Same for John F. Kennedy and in his speech too. Then the next part is you're going to decide, based upon your analysis, which speech do you think is the most persuasive? Not necessarily the speech you like the best, or the speech at first made you really just feel something. Instead of just saying it made me feel this, you need to see through your analysis which rhetor did the best job, okay, at being the most persuasive. Now, perhaps pathos, which is emotion, the appeal to the emotions, is the strongest element. That's fine, but that's what you should say. Give a reason for that, and give examples of how they use pathos, logos, and ethos. All right, and we'll be discussing that. It's called the rhetorical. Some people call it the rhetorical triangle. The 3 appeals. We'll be discussing that in the next this week. Well, the rest of this week is persuasion. It'll be all next week. We'll be looking at different examples of those 3 appeals. So you'll be looking for them in your speech, okay? And then it's time, once you've done those steps, it'll be time to write your essay. The word length the minimum is 1,200 words, okay? That does not include your source page. Okay, that's just the body of the essay. It should be 1,200 words. And it will take that many to set the stage, to do an analysis of both speeches, to compare, contrast, and then give your reasons for the most effective and persuasive speech. This talks about the different elements, the introduction, basic introduction. Let your readers know what it's going to be about. And I have down here another, in another spot, but you can you might choose to tell your readers which speech you think is best right off the top and then give your reasons. That's one option. Or you can wait till the very end and say the research and the analysis presented in this essay clearly shows that is the better speech, okay? And then context, as we've said, and opinion and conclusion, okay? All right, which will include your observations and then all the other rhetorical choices. You can read this in greater detail when you can. Okay, peer review, you'll be assigned a peer review partner. You will be responsible for each other, for giving feedback, just as we did before on the synthesis essay, except this time I'll assign a partner for you. And since you only have one to review, you can go, if it needs it, you can go into a little bit more depth. You'll have a little bit more time, okay? But it should be meaningful feedback. As always, I've given the table of due dates, beginning with next week, and that's the discussion board post I was talking about, no responses, and then the rough draft is due a week from 2 weeks from tomorrow. Is that right? April 9th. Yes, 2 weeks from tomorrow, which is Friday, April the 16th. Okay, and then the rough draft, peer review, and the final is to be turned in on April 21st. So you've got 2 weeks to do all your research, to do your analysis. And as I said, next week, we'll really dig into the rhetorical triangle. Okay, so this is the part I've added. If you've already taken a look at the assignment sheet, I decided to add this. I used to have this as a separate PDF, but it seems to make sense to put it on the assignment sheet itself. So I want to review just a few of these guidelines. The speeches themselves, the PDF and the video that are linked on the assignment sheet cannot be one of your 3 to 5 sources because it's provided for you and that's what you're analyzing. So they can't serve as one of your sources, okay, on your source page. Your context information and all the information from your research should come from other sources, not the speeches or the PDFs. You can use direct quotes from the speeches themselves. However, for this assignment, even though we're doing it in MLA style, I would like for you to just put the rhetor's initials in the parentheses, especially if it could be a little vague, if you've got several quotes going on back and forth. If you do your analysis that way, it's just, sometimes it just can, for clarity, it's good to do that. All right. And I have an example here of what I'm talking about right there, you know. You don't, and let's see, that's the speeches are not the sources, so neither are the transcripts. That's basically what that is saying, okay? Then when you do use direct quotes, and that can be very powerful, in your essay, make sure that they are word for word, every punctuation mark, just to the letter, absolutely correct. There are people in the world that have these speeches absolutely memorized. And when you are dealing with rhetoric that is very famous, it's always important to get it absolutely right. I mean, a direct quote, word for word. But it's especially important because it's so noticeable right off the bat if a word is changed or even if the punctuation is wrong in some cases. So make sure that you get those correct, okay, if you decide to use those. Again, this is academic writing. You got to remember who your audience is, and it's a pretty scholarly crowd. So it should be written in the third person point of view, not first, not second. So no I, me, you, words like that. Okay, I would expect everything to be in third person. It's very, very tempting to want to say, it is my opinion. I think that made me feel, but that's not third person. Let the research, or in this case, your analysis, support your opinion. Okay, so let the analysis do the hard work, and stay in third person, which is more formal in tone and more appropriate for this genre. Okay, you may have a tie also. You may not find that a winner, and that's perfectly fine as long as you can support it. If your analysis at the end of the day shows that it's a tie, then you can have a tie. Okay. All right. There we're talking about logos, pathos, and ethos. And number 8, I have given you examples of the rhetorical triangle, and also commonly used literary devices. I think there are like 10 or 12 on there that I've, a PDF I've linked here for you. There are a lot more, a whole lot more. And if you have experience with those, or find them in the speech, in the transcripts, then you can certainly, you're not limited to the ones I just put on the sheet. I just put the most common ones on there for you. The first time that you introduce the two rhetors, Martin Luther King Jr. and John F. Kennedy, use his full name the first time you mention him, okay? And then after that, how you want to abbreviate his name is totally up to you. So when you're writing and you introduce him for the first time, and John F. Kennedy was president, da 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 da, okay? Then the next time, if you want to make a reference to him, you might choose to say JFK believed that the world was in trouble, for example. But stay with whatever shortened abbreviation you give. The first time you use an abbreviation, try to keep it consistent throughout your essay, okay? Again, the elements are totally up to you. So in the body of your essay, you may want to do, talk about one speech, strengths and weaknesses, talk about the next one, strengths and weaknesses, and compare the two at the end. You may want to do a side by side as you go, and that's absolutely fine too. You can compare and contrast. If that's a good way to show your readers the strengths or whatever of the person that you think gave the most effective speech, okay? Again, this just talks about the context, sets the stage for your analysis. And something I meant to mention is you need to go into this context section, the research, as if your reader, you can't assume your reader knows anything about the two rhetors, the period in history. I mean, it's easy to assume everyone has heard of John F. Kennedy or Martin Luther King Jr. You need to assume that they haven't, okay, that your reader doesn't know. That's going to make your analysis much more meaningful. It's just going to give all the information that the reader will need to understand your analysis, okay? So don't assume that everyone knows or that it's common knowledge. Analysis and comparison is in the body. Identification of logos, pathos, and ethos. Okay, you've got to mention those in your essay, how those were used, and give examples of those. Okay, and the literary devices, both speeches are just full of them, so you shouldn't have any trouble observing those. I don't expect you to find all of them by any means, but just so you mention some literary devices and at least one instance of logos, pathos, or ethos, okay? And then your choice. And your choice should be supported again by the analysis and be persuasive. I should be persuaded that that was the best speech because of this essay you've written about your critical analysis. Okay. Once again, I've got lots of resources on here for you. And I really, really invite you to watch some of these little videos, and I'm going to post more in the announcements for you to kind of get you started at the beginning of next week about pathos, logos, ethos, identifying them, what rhetorical criticism is. So these are just some basic ones that I've included. Of course, MLAs, guide sheets, guidelines, style guides are on here again. JSTOR.org, things that you need that maybe to get you started with your research as well. Okay, but again, you don't have to have an academic journal article, so it just really shouldn't be too difficult at all to find out what was going on in the world. So that's a quick run through of the assignment sheet, and I think you'll find this. I hope you will. This assignment enjoyable because it does have so many components, and it requires that you really dig into it and think about what they're doing, the words they choose, every choice they make, and there's ethos, for example, is the authority that you bring to the podium or whatever, and it's not only in the person, but ethos can be where the person chooses to stand. There's rhetoric in that choice. There's rhetoric in every single choice they made to make their speeches the most persuasive they could possibly be at this important time in history. So we'll dig in. In the meantime, I can't wait to see what you all find for your examples of persuasive rhetoric. There's always such a wide variety, and I hope you can look at as many of those as you can over the weekend after everyone gets theirs posted. Okay, so that's it for today, and I will see you again in a video or online next week. And let me know if you have any questions or if you need any help with anything.